So now what I'm showing you is one of the bronze figures. This is zinc brass, actually, but they're called the bronze figures. It dates to between the 12th and the 15th century, and this is from the pavement period. So probably the first thing that you notice on this figure is it is super realistic. And then all these lines on the face. And you might jump right away and say, they must be scarification, because we've looked at lots of examples of scarification, but we don't believe that's what they represented. We believe that the lines on the face were used to make this person look very unique, very individualized, so that we can make a connection and say this person must have been very powerful and very important. And they would have been reserved, these lines and the way these heads are made would have been reserved for a king or a queen or somebody of very, very high rank. And if we look back through history, we can often see examples of how a king would have said he was chosen by the gods, and this was very accepted. So it's also making a link that this person is not only very powerful, but this person is linked some way to the spiritual world. So they were chosen to be the leader. We also see holes along the hairline here. Sometimes they would insert hair into these holes, or they would attach headgear, like a crown, to this. So it would make it look even more realistic. For me, the eyes are a little on the stylized side, but when I look at the nose and the mouth, I think they're pretty dead on as being super realistic. And these are just, as I keep saying, gorgeously done, and some of the most well-known in the West of the African art. We can look at other examples of cultures in Africa that focused on heads to show power and to show spiritual power. The best example I can give you is the Egyptian art. So in Egyptian art, we would often have the head shown as an animal, let's say, because we want to make that connection to the spiritual world, and they would have a human body. So we do see across almost all African art, I keep saying it, that the head is what is focused on. All right, so let's look at a couple more examples. So we're moving up in time. This is from the 13th to the 14th century. And we see we have 3 examples here. And I ask you, what gender are these figures? Well, there's something very different about the middle figure from the 2 next to them. One, it's bigger. But the other thing is, if you look closely, there are these holes on the face. So once again, now this would have definitely been where hair was inserted. So this was to indicate like a mustache, a beard. So this would be a male figure. This is a king, where the other 2 are female figures. They all wear crowns. So we have a king and queens. Now this, because it's brass, it's not as fragile as the clay, and you can see the shell shape that was actually broken off on the first example. That was clay. Again, we have the lines, and the lines are not scarification. They're to show the importance of the person. You can see, though, that the eyes are rather stylized. They all look about the same across the 3 figures. So here is a closer look at the middle one so that you can see it from the back and close up. And you see this part is open. This is because, again, this is this lost wax technique. So you have it open so that you can remove the clay. And later on, we'll see that things become attached in these heads here. And here we can see the grooves of the lines, again, to show the importance of the person. And the crown here is made, it would have been made out of beads and feathers and seashells. This head and many of these heads are in the British Museum in London. And I want to bring that up, and we'll be talking about this even further next week. But due to colonialization and the fact that Britain colonized big parts of West Africa and then unfortunately sold these people into slavery, and the Yoruba people were predominantly the slaves that end up coming to the Americas. They lost big chunks of their culture, and their art, much of it, ends up in the British Museum. And when we look at Benin art, we will see, in fact, that the Benin art gets sold around the world. And this brings up another, problem when we're looking at art in museums. Luckily, a lot of the Benin art has now been returned or set to be returned, but we'll discuss this more in the future, but you should be aware of that. Where are these pieces and why are they in these museums? Is often because the people were colonized and it was more or less just stolen. Ife began to develop as a city-state in the late first millennium, around 800. It became a leading political, economic, and spiritual center in the lower Niger region. Between 1100 and 1400, it flourished as a commercial center with access to the lucrative trade networks along the Niger River. Today, Ife is regarded as the legendary homeland of the Yoruba speaking people. Even today, its ruler is thought of as the descendant of the original creator god. So what is happening in Europe during this time period between 800 and 1400? Well, this is the medieval time period. So if you know your history a little bit, we have Charlemagne in power in France in the year 800, and he is finally starting to unify Europe again under the idea of the Catholic Church. No one really knows how to read and write except priests and people in the church. So Europe has been this is what we call the Dark Ages. And it's here in this time period that we see the rise of many, many powerful empires in Africa, which then are brought to an end because of colonization. Now let's look at another one of these pieces. And this one, you can see how it's a lost wax piece because you can see how it's hollow. This was cast in copper, which is a very soft metal and extremely difficult to cast. And that's why we have part of the limbs missing. It's just because it's such a soft metal. This dates to around 1300. This figure is in somewhat of a relaxed pose. And we see the figure has some kind of skirt or pants on that looks like it is tied here at the waist. And you can see that the face is kind of in a grimace in a way, I would say, almost as though the face is showing pain, in my opinion. And then I look at the stomach here and I see a rounded stomach. And I have always read this piece as of a young girl, maybe in childbirth, in her first time giving birth to a child. And we can see it if we look across these three, we can see it a little bit better. That it definitely looks like it has a rounded stomach, as though this person was pregnant when this was modeled after them. So here's another example of a copper casting, and this one is actually a mask. So we have, once again, we can see the holes on the face here, around the mouth and up the side. If you remember, I said this is where hair would be attached. So this is indicating that this is definitely a man. And then we once again have holes here, which could be for additional hair that was placed there, or it could be for a crown or some kind of other element to the costume that would have been worn for masquerade. And now we move forward a little bit. Now, look at this. Now we're at the early 15th century, 1400s, right? And all of a sudden we see this figure that actually looks less realistic. The mouth, the eyes, they don't look so realistic, or even the nose, the features of the face, they don't really look so realistic anymore. And this is in terracotta clay. So this necklace is very complex, made out of beads and tassels. The figure also has a large bracelet covering the forearm and a band of beads at the waist. So this is a highly decorated person here. And so we can, of course, make this assumption that this man would have been of, high power and have great wealth again. So this is made of terracotta from the 15th century. And we have heads in a basket. So again, they would not have sacrificed people from their own community. These would have been people that had been taken in battle. They could have been slaves. People taken in battle would have been brought back and made into slaves, or maybe sacrificed immediately when they come back. And they were sacrificed to honor the gods. All right, so this is a bracelet that you would wear, and it's quite large. And you see that the figures, or the image, is in both directions. And this is so that when you're wearing this and you're looking at it, you're seeing it one way, and somebody else looking at your arm is seeing it the other way. So you're both seeing figures that are in the right, correct orientation. This includes a number of things in it. It has attendants, flute players, equestrian warriors, foot soldiers, severed heads. The foot soldiers have severed heads. It has crocodiles. And then it has this very interesting figure in the middle here that has this split tail kind of thing. This is to represent a mudfish. And this figure represents the god of the sea, who brings wealth and fertility. And this is made out of ivory. And ivory is bone, of course. And the whiteness of it suggests the foam from the sea. Again, making that link back to the sea god. We have two pipe smoking figures, and these represent tricksters who facilitate communication between humans and the supernatural world. So back to this idea of the mudfish, which again is represented with the split tail here. And why show the mudfish with the split tail? Well, these are very unique creatures. They live in the water, and then as it becomes the dry season, they can actually go out of the water, crawl across the land using their fins to find another puddle of water. And then as all the puddles dry up, they dig down in the mud, and then they hibernate in the mud. So they believe that these fish represent these dualities between, the living world and the world under the river, where they believe that the gods live. There's this connection between them that is made. So I'm going to stop this video, and then I will continue on with another video.